Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel says it's accepted an Egyptian plan for an immediate ceasefire after its airstrikes on Gaza have killed at least 192 Palestinians. Israeli government spokesperson Mark Regev said the Israeli siege would continue if Hamas rejects the deal.
We said all along that our goal is to bring sustained peace and security to the citizens of Israel and to end the rocket fire on our cities. If the rocket fire nevertheless continues, if Hamas rejects the Egyptian proposal, we of course are ready to continue our operation, to intensify operation as need be, to protect our citizens.
The United Nations estimates more than 80% of Gaza's dead are civilians, including 36 children. More than 700 rockets from Gaza have hit Israel, but no Israeli deaths have been reported. We'll have more on Gaza after headlines. In Afghanistan, at least 50 people have been killed in Paktika province after a car bomb exploded in a crowded market. All the dead are believed to be civilians. The blast came hours after a roadside bomb killed 2 employees of outgoing Afghan President Hamid Karzai in the capital, Kabul. The Taliban claim responsibility for that attack. In Moscow, Russia, a subway train is derailed, killing at least 10 people, injuring more than 100, about half of them critically. The derailment appears to have been caused by a power surge. The United Nations is pulling its staff out of Libya amid some of the worst violence since the U.S.-backed ouster of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. Heavy fighting involving rival militias has killed at least 15 people since Sunday, and shelling has destroyed 90% of planes at the main airport. The closures of the airport in Tripoli and another in Misrata have effectively cut Libya off from nearly all international flights. Secretary of State John Kerry says he's returning to Washington, D.C. to consult with President Obama following talks with his Iranian counterpart over Iran's nuclear program. Speaking today, Kerry cited tangible progress on key issues but said very real gaps remain ahead of a Sunday deadline. In an interview with the New York Times, Iran's foreign minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif, said Iran could agree to freeze its nuclear capacity in exchange for sanctions relief, but Kerry refused to say if the U.S. would accept that deal. The United Nations Security Council has unanimously approved a resolution to allow the cross-border delivery of humanitarian aid into rebel-held areas in Syria without the Syrian government's approval. The move could help millions of people in need of food and other basic resources after the Syrian government has been accused of blocking aid. The Obama administration's deported 38 Honduran women and children, some of them as young as 18 months old, and what is said was, quote, just the initial wave of deportations amidst a rise in children fleeing poverty and violence in Central America. The migrants were flown to San Pedro Sula, a Honduran city with the highest homicide rate in the world. In June, children were murdered at a rate of more than 1 per day in Honduras. One of those deported, Angelica Galvez, spoke after arriving in Honduras.
They didn't give me any rights, nor a lawyer, nor an interview, nothing. They took us in the morning and they didn't tell us anything. If we were going to be deported, nothing.
Why did you leave the country?
The economy.
In an interview with a Mexican newspaper published Monday, Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez blamed the U.S.-backed drug wars in Mexico and Colombia for pushing drug traffickers into Honduras and fueling the violence that's helping to drive migration to the United States. The United States has agreed to sell $11 billion worth of Apache attack helicopters as well as Patriot and Javelin missiles to Qatar in what is reportedly the largest U.S. arms sale this year. Qatar is a close U.S. ally that hosts a key U.S. military base, that Combined Air Operations Center. Citigroup has agreed to pay $7 billion to settle a federal probe over its sale of toxic mortgage-backed securities, which helped sink the economy and displace millions of people. The deal includes $2.5 billion in relief for those who lost their homes. At a news conference Monday, Attorney General Eric Holder said Citigroup purposefully hid the risks it knew were associated with the loans.
The bank's misconduct was egregious, and under the terms of this settlement, the bank has admitted to its misdeeds in great detail. The bank's activities shattered lives and livelihoods throughout the country and also around the world.
Holder said the settlement includes a civil penalty of $4 billion, the largest penalty to date of its kind. But in a statement, the group Public Citizen called the deal too lenient, noting no criminal charges have been announced. The accounting firm Ernst & Young has agreed to pay more than $4 million to settle claims one of its units lobbied on behalf of two companies it had been hired to audit. The Securities and Exchange Commission accused Ernst & Young of violating rules meant to preserve independence, but did not name the other two firms. The Colombian military has carried out the deadliest attack against FARC rebels in more than a year, just before peace talks are set to resume. Colombian troops killed 13 rebels and captured one over the weekend in the country's northwest. Peace talks aimed at ending the 50-year conflict are set to resume today. President Juan Manuel Santos won re-election last month after vowing to continue the talks, but military operations against the FARC have continued. The latest round of documents from Edward Snowden reveal how the British spy agency, GCHQ, has developed a range of secret tools to manipulate the Internet by disseminating propaganda, rigging online polls, inflating page views, conducting mass delivery of emails, and monitoring Skype users in real time. The news website The Intercept published the document, which reads like a menu of covert tools with code names like Angry Pirate, Concrete Donkey, Stealth Moose, and Imperial Barge, a term that refers to the ability to connect two unsuspecting phone users together in a call. The revelations come as the British Parliament is set to begin debate on a fast-track bill to expand government spying powers. A New York Times investigation revealed brutal attacks by corrections officers against prisoners are common occurrences at Rikers Island Jail in New York. A secret internal study conducted by the city's health department, obtained by the Times, found over an 11-month period last year, 129 prisoners at Rikers suffered serious injuries at the hands of corrections staff. In 77% of the cases, the prisoner had a mental illness. In one case, corrections officers intervened when a prisoner tried to hang himself, then forced the prisoner to lie face down on the floor and pummeled him so hard he suffered a perforated bowel and needed emergency surgery. Another prisoner, Andre Lane, told the Times he was beaten so badly he nearly died.
One officer took a knuckle brace and put it on his hand, and it just started hitting me. Boom, boom. And that's when I started getting dizzy and dizzy and dizzy.
None of the guards involved in any of the 129 cases documented has ever been prosecuted. Rikers now houses roughly the same number of mentally ill people as all 24 psychiatric hospitals in New York State combined. To see our interview with Occupy Wall Street activist Cecily McMillan on conditions at Rikers during her 2 months while she was jailed there, go to democracynow.org. In Washington, D.C., 24 people opposed to the gas drilling technique known as fracking were arrested Monday after blockading the entrances to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. They were protesting what they call the agency's rubber stamping of the industry's push to export natural gas. They focused on Cove Point, a liquefied natural gas export terminal proposed by Dominion Resources in Maryland, which the agency is due to issue a final decision on next month. On Sunday, more than 1,000 people joined a People's March against Cove Point and the boom in U.S. fracking, which they say imperils health, safety, and the climate. Missouri is set to execute a prisoner despite newly surfaced evidence he may be innocent. John Middleton is scheduled to die by lethal injection just after midnight Wednesday for 3 murders. But as lawyers say, new evidence may implicate 2 other men and prove that on the day of one killing, Middleton was actually 40 miles away in a jail in Iowa. His lawyers have petitioned a federal appeals court to halt the execution. The South African writer Nadine Gordimer has died at the age of 90. She wrote more than 24 works of fiction, 3 of which were banned under the apartheid regime. In 1991, she won the Nobel Prize for Literature. In a statement, her family said her proudest moments included her testimony at a 1986 trial in defense of 22 members of the African National Congress who were accused of treason. The Nobel Committee particularly highlighted her 1981 novel, July's People, about a black servant who rescues his white employers from civil war. Gordimer spoke about that novel during a Penn World Voices event at Cooper Union in 2007.
I was looking at what was very likely at the time, it seemed to me to happen, that we were, in that country, we were lemmings right at the edge of the cliff, ready to fall over into a civil war. This, of course, precipitated by the white regime there, and naturally answered by black resistance. So July's People was indeed my look into a possible horrendous future, and what a blessing for all the gods that may be that it didn't happen. We avoided it.
Nadine Gordimer died in her sleep at her home in Johannesburg, South Africa, Sunday. She was 90 years old. And Alice Coachman, the first African-American woman to win an Olympic gold medal, has died in Albany, Georgia, at the age of 90. Coachman won gold for the high jump at the 1948 London Games and was honored at the White House before returning to the segregated South. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Aaron Mate. Welcome to our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.